Hey everyone, Michael P. Spradlin back with The Enemy Above, chapter 25. Actually, what I'm going to do today is change it up a little because the chapters are getting a little shorter as we go along. I'm going to read chapter 25 and chapter 26 today, so two for the price of one. I think you can go back and watch the openings of my other videos, get all the info that I've been trying to pass along about other authors taking part in these read-alongs and libraries participating and all that thing. So I won't go into it again. We'll just jump right in to chapter 25 of The Enemy Above. Anton, are we safe? Bubo whispered. The German soldiers had returned to the troop truck and the half-tracks. The roar of the engines was deafening as they rolled out of the yard. Not yet, Buba, Anton said. The Gestapo was famous for faking a departure and then abruptly doubling back, or leaving a few hidden soldiers behind to surprise and capture anyone whom they had not been able to find in their search. Anton knew that Buba was uncomfortable, but only his quick thinking had managed to save them so far. He would not let his efforts be undone by impatience. Just a little longer, Buba, he said. I promise. She nodded her head in agreement. Anton studied her tired, wrinkled face. Just enough light crept into the hiding place that he could see the fierce determination in her eyes. He remembered her standing in front of the Gestapo major in the cave, how she had refused to allow him to gain the upper hand or to intimidate her. It was impossible to know how many lives her stubborn willpower had saved. And now the survival of his family depended on keeping her alive. Dmitri and Pavel were fine men, good uncles who had done their best to reach him, teach him, raise him, and keep him from thinking too much about his father's fate. But even they were not made of steel like Buba. She was the rock of the family, and she did not live through this crisis, then neither would they. Though of course Anton could not be sure that Pavel was alive now. But he did know that Buba was the glue holding them together, and the responsibility of reuniting her with the family was his now. He could not fail. I think it is safe now, Anton said, after a few very long minutes. He removed the trellis from the side of the small set of steps leading to the front door of the farmhouse. They had hidden there, huddled in the shadows, while the soldiers had ransacked the house and the barn. He'd taken a gamble that the search party would be so preoccupied with the obvious hiding places they would not think to look beneath the stairs. He and Bubba had barely had enough time to make it from the barn, pull the trellis free, and replace it behind them before the vehicles arrived. Anton was glad the Gestapo did not have dogs with them, or he and Bubba would surely have been discovered. Anton helped his grandmother lumber from the small dark place and winced at the guttural groan that slipped from her lips as she straightened up. He was torn about what they should do next. On one hand, the Gestapo had already searched the farm and found nothing. It was unlikely they would return. Earlier, he had seen smoke rising on the horizon and assumed they were burning the buildings they had searched so they wouldn't have to examine them again. But they had not burned this one. Perhaps the major was so angry he had forgotten to give the order. If that was the case, he and Buba might remain on the farm in relative comfort while they figured out what to do next. But on the other hand, the longer they remained in one spot, the more likely it was that someone would discover them. Still, Buba needed rest, and Anton thought he might look for supplies they could use. Come, Buba, he said, taking her hand and leading her up the stairs. What are we doing? We are going to wait here until nightfall. We will rest, perhaps sleep on a real bed. Are you sure, Anton? What if the Gestapo return? He led her to a bedroom off the kitchen. The bed looked like a cloud from heaven. Anton helped his grandmother sit down and smiled when he saw the worry on her face disappear, if only for the moment. Do not worry, Buba, Anton said. I will keep watch. If the Gestapo return, we will hide as we did before. They will not find us. When it is dark and you are rested, we will head north to the rendezvous point and find the others. The Germans will not find us. God has made us invisible, Buba. He has made us undetectable in the night. The darkness will protect us. You need not worry. Rest, Buba. We have a long journey ahead of us this evening. As his grandmother looked up at him, he saw tears in her eyes. Buba, he said, is something wrong? Are you ill? No, I am not sick. It's just that you remind me so much of your father, she said as she brought her hand to his face. You are a good boy, Anton, brave and strong like your papa. Soon you will be a man. I am very proud of you. Anton felt that his chest might burst with pride. He smiled at her. Come, he said, helping her onto the bed. You rest. I will keep watch. Thank you, my child. She closed her eyes while he pulled a quilt over her. He left the bedroom and walked the first floor of the house, glancing out each window. For a moment, he considered venturing outside to find some wood to build a fire in the stove. He still had the potatoes. With a little boiling water, he could fix a feast. But the smoke would be visible for kilometers. No, when Bubba woke up, they would eat the potatoes raw. It was better than nothing. He would not lose his grandmother for something so careless. He checked the windows again. There was no sign of light on the road in either direction. Then he began opening the cupboards and closets. They may not have had a feast, but that did not mean they could not find a treasure left behind. As he searched, he remembered the touch of Bubba's hand on his face. He would not let her down. Never. That's the end of chapter 5, and we'll go right on to chapter 26. Major Von Dusen stood at attention in front of General Steuben's desk. The general was taking his time reviewing the report Karl had made. Steuben was clearly happy to let him stew in his own juices. It was nearly impossible for Karl to contain his anger. To think he had been outwitted by an old woman and her protectors left him furious. At least he could claim the deaths of the young woman and her child. The area was 2 bodies closer to becoming Juden-free, and he had exposed their hiding place, which they could no longer use as a safe haven. That had to count for something. But allowing the old woman to escape had cast all of his accomplishments in a negative light. When he first entered headquarters, the Border courthouse that the Gestapo had taken over, he saw a few of his fellow officers smile and turn away, trying to hide their laughter. Word of his failure had spread quickly. He marched toward the general's office. He was on his way to the door when the voice of a man he'd known his entire career forced him to turn around. "Major Von Dusen," Colonel Meringer called. "I have a mission for you." Karl stopped and saluted the colonel, who continued, "There is a convent nearby that needs to be guarded. General Steuben would like to know if you would need 2 or 3 battalions to make sure they do not escape." All the officers broke out into laughter. Von Dusen tried to maintain a good-natured smile, but inside he burned with resentment. He took note of who was laughing. He would get them. He would get them all. They could think him a fool, but Karl was cunning. He would undoubtedly be reassigned as punishment for his failure. He'd be stuck overseeing a supply station or a prisoner transport or some other tedious duty. That was fine. Let them think he was humiliated. He would take the assignment without complaint, but he would find a way to use it to his advantage. He would look for any information on the Juden who escaped that unlikely cave. If they had not yet been caught, they must have another hiding place. He would find it. That would redeem him in the eyes of his commanding officer. He had focused on the goal as he turned away from the laughter and approached whatever fate awaited him in Steuben's office. The general had finally finished with the report and placed it on the desk in front of him. He straightened the papers and tightened his pen, anything to make Van Dusen wait. It was infuriating, but Karl kept his face as still as if it had been carved from stone. No matter what happened, he would show no emotion. "Do you have anything to say, Major?" "Nein, mein General. Everything is in my report." "You still believe you were attacked by partisans?" "Yes, mein General, now more than ever," Von Dusen said. The general leaned back in his chair and studied him. "Why?" "Intelligence reports," Van Dusen replied. "Explain." "I have read the reports from our infantry units in the field, as well as the after-action bulletins from SS interrogations, as I'm sure you have. We know the militias in this area are short of supplies, low on ammunition, food, everything. So why would they risk an attack on an armed Gestapo squad if they had no ammunition?" "Why?" "Because the old woman is important." "What? How can an old woman who can barely walk be important? She is just a Jew." "I do not know specifically, mein General, but think of it. What if she leads the resistance? Or perhaps she guides the Juden to safety? She could know the location of all their safe houses. Of course, she might be nothing more than a symbol, but whatever she is too important to be captured." The general steepled his fingers, his face a mask of concentration. For a moment, Von Dusen thought he had been convincing. If Steuben would just give him another chance, he would find the woman and give her what she deserved and the boy who'd bludgeoned him too. "Nein," the general said, sitting up in his chair. "I do not see this woman as anything other than a hapless Jew hiding in a cave. No one who is trying to survive would place their fates in the hands of an old woman." Von Dusen's heart sank, but he would not let his disappointment show. Somehow, he would find a way to get what he wanted. Revenge. "You are being reassigned to prisoner transport. A truck full of prisoners waits outside. It is fueled and ready to depart." "That is all, Herr Major." Von Dusen came to attention and saluted. "Heil Hitler," he said. He turned smartly on his heel and left the general's office. Making his way through headquarters, he exhaled. His worst fears had been realized. Prisoner transport. An assignment that gave him no way to shine. As the general had promised, a truck was waiting by the courthouse steps, its engine running. A ragged and motley group of Juden had been stuffed into the truck bed, exhaustion lined their faces. They were mostly women, children, and old men. The driver, a sergeant, saluted Major Van Dusen as he climbed into the passenger seat of the cab. It would be dark soon. Carl waited patiently as the truck lurched into gear. He had a plan, and darkness would be the perfect time to execute it. And that's the end of chapter 26. We'll see you back tomorrow with chapter 27. Take care, everyone.